All right. Welcome to episode 177 of the HP Outdoors Waterfowl Podcast. We're your on-demand source for all things waterfowl and waterfowl hunting. If you're new to our program, you can check us out at hpoutdoors.com. You can head over to all of our social media platforms, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. You can check our podcast out on any of the quality podcast directories out there, iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, all the good ones. If you're a Facebook user, you can head over to our Facebook listeners group, get in there and chat with a bunch of like-minded hunters. And my co-host, Dan Harushka. Dan, what's up, man?
And finally getting some nice weather. We're in the 60s and doing this on a Saturday afternoon. I had to stop mowing so I could come over and talk to a good friend of the show here. Our good buddy.
Yeah, last time we talked about mowing, it snowed the next day, so hopefully that doesn't happen. But as you mentioned, we do have a good friend of the show joining us this week, Mr. Aaron Hitchins. What's up, man? How you doing?
Hey, I'm just glad you guys gave me a reason to put on the old Canadian tuxedo. It's been a while since I wore anything with buttons.
You put your dress clothes on for this. I appreciate that.
No promises on pants, though. Yeah.
Well, we'll keep it from the waist up, ideally. But yeah, for those of you that are in our Facebook listeners group, you can head over to the group and see Aaron live with us in here. And we've been doing this the last couple of weeks to basically field questions from anybody that's watching the show live. And it's been a big success. We did this with Kyle Jones last week, which was fun. So looking forward to another chat with you this week, Aaron. And I think maybe to start, for anybody that might not know you or know much about you, why don't you give us a little bit of just background about yourself and kind of your, how you got to where you're at today and sort of all of the things that ties you into the outdoors and all that good stuff.
Perfect. Yeah, well, I was born and raised in Ontario, Canada, about an hour and a half northwest of Ottawa, so pretty much in the middle of nowhere. Love to hunt. I especially loved waterfowl hunt at that point in time. And after I went away to college, I actually moved to Kansas and guided for a season. When I was down there, I met my business partners, Matt White and Dustin Lutt, and joined the team at Rockhouse Motion. And so since then, we've been basically taking photographs, making films, and building brand campaigns for outdoor brands, and doing everything we can to hunt as much as possible, enjoy as much time as possible outside. A few years ago, I moved back to Canada. I was living in Canmore, Alberta, and I'm planning on moving back there. But right now, I'm out on the coast of British Columbia in a town called Squamish. So enjoying some time on the Pacific for sure. It's been a really good place to be because weather's been great, and we got a boat in the water, and fishing is an essential service, and I am glad it is.
So what were you really into as a kid growing up? You're up there in a beautiful part of Canada. Were you just out in the mountains all the time, or how did you spend your evenings after school and weekends?
Well, Ontario actually doesn't have much for mountains, but I kind of lived at the first place where the boreal forest turned into agricultural land. So what that meant is that while it isn't a very populous flyway, what we did do is we got a lot of birds that were stopping after a long rest or feeding for the first time. So when I was younger, in the summer, I would be in the boat fishing all day. And then right away, once I turned 12 or 13 or whatever you had to be legal, started hunting. My dad probably waterfowl hunted a little bit more than a lot of the other people in the area, which was good for me because I sunk my teeth way into that. And because I lived on a lake, there was a marsh on the far side of the lake that we could hunt just by taking the boat off the dock. So realistically, when you say after school, like when I was in high school in the fall, I would hunt the evening flight almost every day and then hunt weekends in the morning. And then naturally that grew and we got a goose decoy spread. We started hunting honkers and it kind of went a little wild from there. But it's, the thing about waterfowl hunting for me that was really cool is that where I grew up, everybody whitetail hunted. And I really loved that. And as you can see from the wall behind me, I still love that. Although most of those are my fiance's. But what was really interesting about waterfowl hunting and turkey hunting too is that it wasn't something that was like a cultural fixture where I grew up. So what I was able to do is dive into it with fresh eyes, not just follow the leader, not just do what the guys were doing, And so because of that, I really was able to learn a lot, and was challenged to sort of figure things out on my own, which I think is really important at that age in general. I think it's really important in hunting just to kind of figure out how you want to do it that's fun for you, right? Like there were a significant number of water-swatted birds amidst the local culture, and then I read somewhere that was unethical, and it never happened again by me. But yeah, just carving it out, getting decoys, learning to call, taught myself all of those things, and it was really interesting just to sort of take that on. And I realized, it was very uncommon for me to have the passion I did without having somebody to kind of help me along the way. But it really was cool, and my dad loved it as well. And so that was the thing that we did together, probably pretty typical throughout my later years at home.
So I'm trying not to be too distracted here as I'm having technical issues with my camera. So forgive me if I'm bouncing around a little bit, but I find an interesting part of the story being that you ended up in Kansas guiding. And how do you end up, talk us through that process of how you went from a small town, in Canada to, guiding in Kansas, which ultimately led to, a lot of what you're into today.
Yeah, so it all started, I don't know if anybody remembers this, but Avery Outdoors had a message board. And a 15-year-old Canadian kid had the internet, and boy, he really liked that message board. And so I remember one day there was like the Avery Youth Field staff was going to be a thing to like come alongside the pro staff. And so I applied to that, with this long, verbose, eloquent application, but without really big stacks of birds. So I thought I was completely hosed. But I ended up being selected and named the captain of the youth field staff. So like the first one, I guess. So I was way into that. And so we organized a hunt in Kansas kind of to get all the kids together, went down there, made some friends down there. And then when I finished up at school, one of the rules that I'd sort of made for myself is everybody's applying to jobs. I went to a business school, which was pretty high performance focused. And everybody was coming out of school and the focus was get a job. I got all this student debt. I got to get a job. And I just kind of realized I didn't want to apply for any jobs I didn't want to get. I didn't get the job at Budweiser, which I was pretty excited for at the time. And whenever I couldn't be sampling pints for a living, I decided, you know what, I like to hunt. I'm going to go down and help my friend at the time with the outfitter. And so that's kind of what happened. It was a very bold and random move, especially because Kansas of all places, but the hunting's fantastic, and had a really great deal of fun that season and learned a lot. And then the ultimate cherry on top, I met the boys I work with now.
So by getting rejected by Budweiser, is that why you drink Miller Lite?
Yeah. I try and drink anything but Budweiser, but I drink enough that I can't be too much of a purist for sure.
Nice. Oh, that's funny. So, thinking about what the world is going through now, Aaron, how concerned are you about your work situation and, getting out of Canada to do your job, just your overall thought process on the whole situation?
Yeah, well, I'm pretty pessimistic. I've been paying pretty careful attention to this I sent the boys a message about 3 weeks before the mayhem hit, and I said, hey, I've been following this thing. I think it's more serious than people realize. We've been kind of conditioned from some of the past few pandemic-like things, whether that's H1N1 or SARS or whatever, that this is a, classic media machine. They get everybody wound up and nothing happens. This one is different. I was reading some really interesting things, and like 2 weeks before the NBA shut down, I think it might have been a little bit less, but I predicted we'd have 2 million infected in the U.S. by the start of May, and I think we're going to hit that. And for business, very bad. When you travel to work and you shoot, and you can no longer travel to work and shoot, it's very bad. For the companies that we love and the products that we love, very bad for them. You're going to have people, A, not being able to travel, and B, not having consistent income. And that is going to take all the things, all the brands that we work with, especially. So Rockhouse, I don't know what everybody's level of familiarity is, but we do our best to do the best work for the best brands, right? There's two problems with that right now. One, the best brands are having less people spend money because people don't have money. If you need something and you usually get the $700 version of something, you might get the $200 version of something. And so those premium companies are really going to get hit hard, and that's the type of company that we've aligned ourselves with over the years. And the other thing is, we are the premium option. We do, in my opinion, the best work, and because of that, we charge the most money. I've heard quite a bit about that, sort of filtering through the ranks over the years. But yeah, we are certainly an expensive option. And so if you're a marketing, or if you're a company, what's the easiest thing to cut without, laying off any people, shutting down any plants? The easiest thing to cut is marketing. So I don't blame them for that at all. Everybody's in survival mode, but I would say I'm fairly pessimistic. We've lost quite a significant amount of money in contracts, and I think that's going to continue. Like every kind of disruption, there's always opportunity for people to adapt and change, and I think this will be no different. But this is a really bad thing, and I think it's going to be bad for a long time. There's a pretty strong belief from people that there's going to be a vaccine or something's going to happen that snaps our fingers and brings it back. Even if we open up the country and open up the economy, I think that just the way that people interact and the way that they privately make decisions is going to lead to a very significant GDP contraction. And I don't think people are really prepared mentally for the hardship that's going to come across categories. So I don't want to lead off on a depressing note, but since you asked, it's going to be tough for us. But we started in a great place. We'll finish in a great place. It's going to be tough for everybody, and this is far from over. In fact, I would argue that it's just getting started.
Yeah, we've talked about this in the past. Last couple of weeks, we've had Barton on here, Ryan Bassham, Kyle Jones. We've talked about this quite a bit. Ben Webster. How this is affecting different people in the market. And one of the themes that we keep coming back to, though, is that oftentimes we see some of the most innovative work come from need, right? Like this, this type of situation is going to force not just companies like you, but companies that you work with to live in an uncomfortable place because it's, it's survival at this point. So the one thing I am optimistic is, as we get through the air quotes here to the new normal, whatever that might look like, I am hopeful that we'll see some really innovative things coming from companies, whether it's the way that they do virtual things or how you're able to do things online, or just create easier access to the information in the product for people that's now it's harder than ever for them to get, whether it be a budgetary restriction or just can't travel somewhere or whatever. So, I'm sure that, you guys being a creative based company are probably already looking at ways that you can do that kind of thing. But, I'm hopeful. And I'm interested to hear your opinion on something like that, as far as what we could see as part of that new normal structure as we move forward.
Yeah. So one of the things that's interesting about it is everybody's new normal, which is work from home, do what you can with what you have. That's kind of how we've operated at Rockhouse for years, right? We have people in Luke Clark, you guys know, California. We got the boys are in Kansas, Matt and Dustin. We got Collins in a different part of Kansas. We got a buddy, or one of our guys is in Nova Scotia in Canada. We have a guy in Quebec. We work with a guy in Denmark if we need stuff on a deadline. We have always believed in finding, celebrating, and elevating top talent to where we have a team of effective, self-motivated people that are able to work from all over. And we collaborate on Slack. We use Zoom calls all the time with clients. And we have an office, but it's largely for gear storage, and it's in Matt's backyard. So it's been interesting watching people adapt to this. There are people that struggle and are, man, I used to have to just go to work and then I was at work and now I actually have to do stuff. And then there's people that either getting to spend more time with their family, getting to spend more time where they want to be. You're able to structure your day in a way that's productive to you and not what meets the company guidelines. And so I think that the remote labor force is something that's going to be a very meaningful change because, companies spend a ton of money on brick and mortar to have everyone under one roof. And at times it's valuable, but I think that you're going to start to see more people go to less days a week, smaller offices, and then take the money they save and do sort of team building offsites that kind of enrich the workforce, build morale, and give people a more positive experience. And I think when it comes to product and delivery of things, this is just going to accelerate a shift that was already underway. And one of the things that I'm a little pessimistic about is this is really, really hard for your local business. It's very hard for your small guy. As these closures kind of roll through, you're seeing Walmart still open, but the local hardware store may not be. And, that's, I guess, the nature of a globalized economy and free market economics. But it's going to be really tough for the little guy. So, and the little guy that we all love. So it's if people have an opportunity, and there's something that they've been putting off buying or think they might need from someone who they know lives and operates in their community, I think now would definitely be the time to do it, because it's pretty tricky when these guys have so much backing and they're already, if something bad happens in one spot, they can take an advantage in another spot. So it's kind of interesting in that regard. I don't know if that answers your question.
I think one of the great things about small businesses too, you don't have 500 or more people in the same spot if you're trying to avoid getting sick or spreading anything. So I mean, we're hitting the little guys as hard as we can, and ordering food just to make sure our favorite restaurants stay open once this is gone and taken care of. But very interesting point. And you might have a small business on your hat that if people are interested in some coffee, what's the story there?
Yes, this is a company called Early Riser Coffee Roasters. Essentially what happened is at Rockhouse, we make our living based on the outdoors, right? We're very fortunate to have beautiful places and wild animals and the likes to pursue both personally and to an extent professionally. So we decided that instead of making kind of a one-time donation to a conservation organization and deciding what that was, we would take that same amount of money, a bunch of effort, and try and create a brand that people could replace something they consume daily with our coffee. So if they normally drink coffee in the morning, instead they drink our coffee. The kicker is we donate $1 a bag to conservation, which at wholesale is over half of our margin. And online, it's still a pretty significant chunk. It was far from a economic endeavor, but it's really started to gain quite a bit of momentum as people are able to choose based on the roast what organization they donate to, and we're looking to continue to expand as it grows. So right now, we really work on the fishery side of things primarily with Trout Unlimited, Bonefish, and Tarpon Trust. But we have a couple new roasts that are getting ready to launch that'll slide over and more into the hunt side of things.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think that's a trend too. You're seeing a lot of, and I think you mentioned this actually in an Instagram post recently when you were talking about your coffee efforts. You got guys like Sam Sohol and a lot of people that have taken the ability to get a product and leverage that to help conservation, which I think has been awesome. And you're seeing a lot of support for stuff like that. I mean, I know Sam has been put out checks and stuff that he's written to these these organizations and stuff like that, just to show the power of hey, buy a t-shirt or buy a mug or something, and what that can do on the back end when everyone does a little bit. So you're talking about giving up at wholesale half the margin on the product. This is obviously not a get rich thing business model. It's really something rooted in a good cause. So that I'm excited to see that, and definitely look forward to getting some of that. And I mean, I'm drinking an absurd amount of coffee right now. Like, quarantine life has, I mean, I don't know if there's an unhealthy level, but I'm fixing to find out if there is, because I'm consuming a significant amount. Definitely excited to get some Early Riser in the mix for sure.
Yeah, I mean, Sam is incredible, and we take a lot of inspiration from what he's done. He's such a great voice, and he's very smart about the way that he does things, and he's very smart about his opinions on conservation. He doesn't get wrapped up in kind of the fringe stuff. What really excites us about this is it just gives you an opportunity. It's not a big extraneous purchase. It's just replacing something that you normally consume. You replace it at the same or a similar price point. It's a premium quality product, and then if you drink it for a year, and that stuff adds up, right? If all the members of these organizations drank it, it would be gigantic. So I don't expect that from people. I just want to give people the opportunity to do it and help those companies tell their stories along the way.
That's awesome. And I want to go circling back to the whole global economy and everything that goes along with that. We have a question that I know you're on your phone, so it's hard to see, but we'll bring it on the screen here. And it is from our friend Vandekamp. And it's
look at that profile
like
pic.
Jerry Seinfeld or something. It says, Aaron, what's your take on the global supply chain? And do you think we'll actually see a shift away from majority Chinese sourcing model after this, or do you think we'll fall back?
It's an interesting question. China's a bad word right now for sure, and that's a bipartisan thing. I think that a lot of people in the U.S. are really sensitive to the reliance on China. I think that it could change supply chain away from China. I do not think that supply chain will go away from China and land back stateside or back on the continent. I think the reality is we live in a global economy. People are used to paying what they pay for the goods that they have, and I don't think that people are willing to pay enough of a premium to have things all done here. It can be done, but again, it's a luxury good, right? You look at anything that's made in the U.S., you're paying more for it. That's great, but should be encouraged and should be, whether it's made in the U.S. or Canada or anywhere, it's always important to know where your goods come from. I just think that the reality of our everyday life is that we might buy 50 things and we pay very careful attention to 2 of them because of the ones we love the most. When the reality is that there's a lot more going on from our purchasing behavior where we're just so cost sensitive that I don't see those supply chains moving back, just because there's a gap between what people are willing to work for and what they're willing to pay. And I think that gap is too large to change in the short term.
Yeah. He's also asking, how is Mo? So that's part of our question.
I knew this was going to come up. I didn't realize it would take 5 minutes into the show.
Hey man, she's awesome. So
no one, there's like 4 people on this right now that know who that is. So Aaron, please elaborate for us.
These guys are the only ones in the world that could ask me how my mom was doing, and I wouldn't drive a truck through their house. But
I was going to say, when I saw the question come in from Vandekamp, I was like, I'm not putting that one on the screen.
Man, Mo is a number of things. Mom's really struggling with this general situation. She's on her own, but the good news is she has the dog, and she's working with Forge quite a bit. He's a Southern Oak Labrador, and he's got as much energy as she does. Mom's an ass kicker, right? She is an absolutely undaunted, whether that's an explorer or general outdoors person. She just mainlines fresh air and just goes absolutely buck wild in every type of outdoor pursuit possible. And she's found a dog that can still wear her out, so that's good. It's been, I think it's tough for her from a social situation right now, just being, on her own, because Logan and I aren't close, and she's very aware of the health risks. Having worked in hospitals as a respiratory therapist, she knows the exact mechanism that the virus is using to kill people, and that makes her pretty upset, having seen a lot of that throughout her career. But the dog's doing great, and she's still, checking into Cornerstone and seeing where she can make tweaks, and it's been a really fun process for her and Forge, and he's a beaut, man. Most photogenic dog in the world, if nothing else.
Yeah, actually, this is a good transition. I wanted to bring this up. A lot of people are now looking at home training options and things like that. And Cornerstone is a company, obviously, that we work very closely with and have a ton of users in our group. And it's something that has just, been an invaluable resource for a lot of guys. And I find it interesting, that she can still, she's still using Cornerstone as a training tool, despite the fact whether she's going to hunt the dog or not or whatever. But talk a little bit about just the Cornerstone platform and like how it was all designed to sort of just be a digestible product for the person at home who, is trying to fit gun dog training into everyday life. And maybe now they've got some more time to get into it. But, the other part of it is like, for a lot of guys, gun dog training is the getaway, right? Like that's the release, that's the safe, like that's the the unplugged time in the off season, especially, and Cornerstone undoubtedly is becoming a huge part of guys' way of coping and dealing with the stress of what everyone's dealing with, whether they're out of work or don't know how long are they going to be able to work or whatever the case might be. But the Cornerstone's playing a big role in a lot of people's homes right now, and that's just fact.
Yeah, I mean, what's really cool about it, right, is we have a lot of people that use the program. One guy, Ben Gilliland in Mississippi, he has a line of American Labradors that have run through his family. Extremely experienced trainer, uses Cornerstone and uses it to tweak and change his training methods. The guy could train a dog and never look at a piece of material for the rest of his life, but he wants to do it better, find new ways. Cornerstone works for him. On the opposite end of that spectrum is Maureen, my mother. She's come waterfowl hunting a small handful of times, and every time she cries. I remember one time specifically.
Dan does too.
Working this flock of geese. The one land, I had one bird left in my limit. The goose rolled over, peeked in her blind, made eye contact, flew off, and I killed it. And Mom hasn't come goose hunting since then. But what's cool, right, is that we were able to take this program, and you're taking somebody that has waterfowl hunted twice and watched it happen through tears and never seen a working dog in its element. And, is he perfect? No. But can that dog, and he was supposed to be going for snow geese like next week, but it looks like it's going to be all program for him to hunt for the first time. But like the dog gets it, and she's been able to leverage that with, I don't really know what I'm doing. And I don't live there anyways. And so she's been able to take having absolutely no idea. Like I'm talking the pinnacle of canine cluelessness, and she's taken the program. And the cool thing is you go at your own pace, right? Like you charge and charge and charge when it's a puppy, and then the dog kind of goes through puberty and is just absolutely uncontrollable, and then you lose track, and then you hop back in, and like it's there for you. There's a very natural progression. There's a very natural flow chart. So like you have a dog that you've hunted with for a couple of years and you want to improve it, there's an opportunity. You have a puppy, you have no clue what you're doing, there's an opportunity. And I think that the big ingredients when it comes to success with dog training, assuming you have a dog and you have Cornerstone, is consistency, which is difficult, and time, which is difficult. Well, right now we're in a world where people have time like they essentially never have before, with obvious exceptions to people that are, being called to go above and beyond. And beyond the time factor, it's just the ability to be consistent. People that travel like us for work, you're home, you can get a month of consecutive training in. And the difference that you can make with a good dog in that program in a short period of time, if you're consistent and invested, it's mind-boggling. I mean, I just absolutely love it. And it's, the labs that Mom's had, because we lost one. Unfortunately, the first one that we got, Stoke, and then Forge is kind of his successor. But the amount that we've learned and the amount of satisfaction that comes, that, I mean, even without having hunted them, the people that are in our community, when they see that dog and how it responds, and from a place of love too, right? And very important to my mother is that it's not, the dog doesn't come and sit because she kicks it in the head. It comes and sits because it knows how to make her happy. It knows how to make her unhappy when it wants to do that. But it's pretty cool seeing that level of collaboration between an animal and a human being, and having it be done from a place of love.
So with your mom being the main trainer for Forge, is she going to go on these hunts, come the fall? Is she going to go and she'll be running the dog exclusively?
That's the theory. I think she'll probably let me run them just because she'll get too spun. But, the plan is Logan and Mom and I are going to go hunt some pothole somewhere, and Logan will hopefully be able to shoot some stuff, and I'll be able to call birds and run the dog, and Mom will be able to sit there and be proud. But yeah, she's keen on coming. I mean, the thing is, she likes hunting. She loves the adventure. She loves being outside. She, whether we've elk hunted together, we've deer hunted together, waterfowl hunted, and turkey hunted. And she just loves a day with a lot of close encounters where nothing gets killed. And thankfully, with me and her son, that happens a bit. But every once in a while, the blind squirrel finds a nut, and Maureen gets quite upset when when something has to die for sure. We'll see though. When the dog starts attacking it, the first cripple that's like cruising along and he just linebackers that thing, she's gonna be a happy lady.
Speaking of linebackers, being the Cleveland Browns fan that you are, how do you feel about the draft so far for the Brownies this year?
Very, very good. Very good. I don't know if you noticed that our first round pick, Mr. Jedrick Wills Jr., was wearing a Canadian tuxedo when he got drafted. Biggest in life. What does he put on? The freshest denim. And he's just an absolutely natural fit in the land. Cleveland is hosting the draft next year, and I've been telling people it'll be very strange picking 32nd overall. We're winning that ship. No, frankly, I'm really excited about the draft. I think the management and coaching is very aligned, and they take an approach to football that, even though I've never played or coached at any level, the way that I like to think about talent and evaluate talent just in general is something that they really subscribe to. So kind of the wish list of guys that I have is similar to what they have. So whether or not that works, time will tell. But I went into both the first and second round with a guy at the top of my wish list, and they got them both, which as a Browns fan, trust me, with old Johnny Manziel in the history books, not happen very often.
So how did you become a Browns fan? That's my number one question right now.
Family curse. Yeah, my grandfather liked the color orange, or my great-grandfather or something, and lived on the North Shore of Lake Erie. Cleveland's on the South Shore of Lake Erie. Lots of people in Ontario are either Bills fans, which is potentially even worse, or Lions fans, which I would argue is definitely worse. And we split the difference and went straight down across the lake to the greatest franchise in all of football.
Oh my gosh!
All right, let's.
Ravens fans?
What's that?
No.
Redskins?
So while I live in Virginia, I grew up in Western PA, and you would think that I'd be a Steelers fan, but I'm not. I don't have an NFL allegiance anymore. I would say I follow the Redskins most closely because I live in this area, but I'm more of a college guy. I went to Penn State. I love college football. And typically I only get one day a weekend to devote to football, and my wife only allows one, and she is a Penn State alumna as well. So usually it's Saturday afternoons and watching the boys play, and then Sunday we're off doing kids stuff, and I'm following fantasy football on my phone and getting screamed at for that. But probably Redskins for me. If I have to say that I'm following a team these days, it's probably them. Dan's a diehard Michigan Wolverine fan, and I don't know who your NFL team is.
I actually grew up liking the 49ers. I think I'm kind of transferring more to the Steelers as of late, but I really could care less.
The Steelers?
It's just, that's a family curse too, I guess, right?
Well, you should know, Aaron, where we grew up in Northwest Pennsylvania, we were like kind of an hour and a half north of Pittsburgh, probably 2 hours east of Cleveland, maybe not that far, and about an hour and a half south of Buffalo. So we had a little bit of everybody kind of in that mix, but it was predominantly Steeler country, I would say, unfortunately. But
and my father-in-law is a Browns fan, so it's fun to have those yearly battles with him anyways.
So let's shift gears and talk a little hunting. I had an opportunity to hunt with you guys during the Torture Tour out in Maryland. I guess that was like 2 years ago now. It feels like forever, maybe a year and a half or something. But I remember my daughter was like 2 days old at the time. But there's a couple things that I remember about that hunt that really stick in my mind. And where I'm going with this is I'm interested to hear some stories from your travels, because in that hunt, what came out of it was you went skinny dipping in the Chesapeake, I believe was one result. And I ended up with the photo that you took in Delta Waterfowl magazine. So that's a pretty big highlight for me. But I'm sure you skinny dipping in the Chesapeake was also a highlight.
Yeah, it's probably not on the top of list places I'd recommend skinny dipping.
in February or
January,
whatever it was, we were out there.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, we like to have fun. We work hard, we play hard. We don't really do much in between, and
Yeah.
it's full tilt all the time. And yeah, that hunt was awesome because, I mean, frankly, I was like, man, this is not ideal because we're here to photograph and film the usage of the finest firearm in the world, and we're also in a rusty tree-covered pontoon boat, and we're not going to fire a damn shot. But I was proven wrong. The sea duck hunting is so fun. That might have been one of the more just unadulterated fun days. Like, forget tweaking the decoys, forget tweaking the hide, like case of ammo. You don't shoot it now, you're never going to shoot it. I mean, it was amazing, and it actually turned out pretty well. I mean, a very difficult environment to film in, being jammed into a pontoon boat blind with like 5 other people and trying to stay on sea ducks, but we got some really good clips out of it, and did what we needed to do for Beretta. I think that was really a good proof point for them with that gun, just because it's actually generally preferred by guys that hunt in the saltwater quite a bit. And yeah, we certainly tortured them. That was pretty good, and a wild hunt. I actually saw some surf scoters the other day when I was fishing out here, and I was trying to remember if I actually shot one myself or if I needed to tag one of those in the fall to throw one on the 41.
Well, I could say that I never thought I would do it, and I doubt I'll ever do it again. But on that hunt, I was actually shooting at birds while you were floating around in a dry suit out in the decoys. Like, that was, to me, that was one of probably the moments when I was like, they're not messing around when they come out here to do this. I mean, you talk about, doing the best work. I don't think a lot of people, I mean, the guide I remember just was like, you're going to do what? Like, so that was really just a cool experience. And, yeah, I think that photo that ended up in the Delta Waterfowl magazine was one that you took while you were in the water, which is kind of cool.
Yeah. I think one of the things that we had the opportunity of when it comes to waterfowl hunting, right, is there's just a lot more going on than when you're trying to photograph Western big game hunts or whitetail hunts, and you get to take chances with stuff like that, right? I had always felt, and I was thinking about how I'd want to do the best work around that you just don't get a perspective of, like, outside of the sink box or outside of the layout boat or the blind or whatever. And so that was something that I'd planned on doing. And I ideally wanted to have birds kind of decoy while I was in the decoys, just because, once they commit, they're so committed. The problem is they weren't really committing in the first place. So that didn't happen, and that shot is still out there. But yeah, it was pretty cool. I mean, you guys did smack a couple birds when I was in the water, and got some split level stuff of the beautiful pristine water of the Chesapeake Bay, and the bottom half of the frame, the boys and girl just unloading the Beretta at the top. So yeah, it was fun. And I mean, that's the thing, right? There's an innately, I always love when there's an opportunity to physically differentiate when you're doing photo work or storytelling. It's a lot of times it's pretty two-dimensional. So whenever you can get up or get down or get under or whatever, and sort of push yourself physically a little bit to make a difference, that's a time when Rockhouse shines, because we take a lot of pride in being creative and resourceful and tough. And I don't get the cold that easy, so I may as well leverage it.
Can you go into maybe the story, the picture that I put up for this episode, and you're wearing all black and hunting. Where was that at? Who were you with? And were you on assignment with that, and you got some hunting in, or how did that come about?
Yeah, I was on assignment for that. We were up north with Lee Jose and his guys. We were shooting something. It was going to be a personal project for him that we were really excited about. It was kind of the bird that he'd always dreamed of. It ended up turning into I think there's a couple heavy shot ads that came out of it. There's a print ad I know that a photo of me from that day has ended up in, and I know that we used some of the footage for a heavy shot ad back in the day. But yeah, so essentially we were up there, we're shooting. I had, there's only 2 spots in the boat, so that means that the third person had to hunt, which was fine by me. And yeah, I killed a harlequin the first day off of land. This was an Island X in St. Paul Island, which is in the Pribilofs off the coast of Alaska. And yeah, incredibly gnarly place, right? Like I take a lot of pride in having been to many of the gnarly places, and that's kind of where we thrive. But man, that place is absolutely wind blasted and freezing cold. And I mean, you couldn't get a boat in the water the first couple of days that we were there. So I ended up hunting from land the first day, got a harlequin, and then we had a crazy day shooting old squaws. And after everybody shot their limit, I grabbed the gun and had one flock go over and picked out an absolute stud there. And then, I had 2 shots at kings on one of the final days. I was in the Zodiac kind of bouncing around in like these massive swells. Certainly something that you would not think was a safe idea. But, no matter how stupid it is, if you do it for long enough, you just think it's fine. And you're kind of bobbing around out there. And I had one come by and then a second and got them both. So I was pretty grateful to be clutch that morning, because those opportunities are few and far between. And I don't know if I'll ever get back up north there. But, man, if it's in the cards, it's something else. I mean, just to see kind of the absolute full force of the North Pacific is I mean, it's very humbling, very impressive, and it's just raw, man. That's like one of the most raw places on earth, just in the middle of the damn ocean, and you know it. It's not like you get offshore a little bit and you're like, oh yeah, this could be the mainland. It's like, no, this is a rock in the middle of an angry place.
So you touched on my next question a little bit, but you said you do things long enough and it just, you start to feel comfortable with it. But, in your pursuit to, find that next, shot and physically manipulate the angles and things like that, how often or have you ever been in a situation where you're like, okay, I think we've overstepped here. We need to probably back up a little bit. Cause I mean, I watch on your Instagram and stuff, and you guys are doing like these backcountry skiing and stuff, and just like parts of the country, up there that I see in movies, and I immediately associate with like avalanches and just, St. Bernards running out with kegs around their neck trying to save everybody. Like, I don't know, like it just looks terrifying to me, but you're out there like every weekend on your Instagram, like, crushing these spots. So obviously, you push those limits, but have you found the edge where you're like, maybe this one we should?
Oh yeah. I mean, the thing especially when it comes to skiing, you don't want to find the edge, because the edge hits hard, right? With the avalanches and stuff. So, with the thing with that, and I'm very grateful to have really smart and experienced friends in that world, but the same way that we would study, and understand that the birds are going to land into the wind and that they're going to roost here, and that the sun's, the sunny morning is going to be better for this reason and that reason. It's the same thing, right? Like it's just an assessment of the risk profile of the snowpack as it pertains to skiing, what the sun effect is, what the effect of the wind is, what the general stability is. And yeah, we had 2 or 3 times this year where there was like a line we wanted to ski, but we had to back out because it just wasn't going to be safe. And I mean, yeah, you maybe could do it, but like the downside is so significant there that you just have to be smart and enjoy it for the journey more so than just the one sweet ski line. But man, when it lines up, it can be pretty fantastic. And then in other aspects of life, I can think of like 2 or 3 times that come to mind as far as like when I pulled the pin, I was like, this is absolutely not going to go. And one of those was sheep hunting. We were, up on a mountain, like giant, super remote mountain. Oh, look, there's another giant, super remote mountain with some sheep on it. And in between, there's like this kind of knife edge ridge. And we're like, well, I guess we should go over there. And we get about halfway and we get drilled by this blizzard. We got like 8 inches of accumulation in 45 minutes. I mean, it was an absolute whiteout. And it actually got to the point that Matt White was with me and we took a selfie together just in case they knew we were buddies to the end if they found our bodies. Because it was gnarly, man. You couldn't see a thing. We didn't go up that mountain, so we didn't know how to get down. and all the shale when it was wet was super slippery. And the thing is like, it's one thing to fall and roll down the hill, but like there's a lot of cliff exposure. So like you can't tell when something drops out. So we kind of looked at satellite imagery and kind of felt our way down the mountain. We got cliffed out a couple times, but we ended up making it back to camp at like 3 a.m. And we ended up actually killing the sheep the next day though. So it's a happy story. Wow. I got he's over there in the corner, but so that was good. That was one time when I was like, man, we got to be smart. And then big water is another one. Like with shooting fishing, one of the things that happens, right, is when we roll into town, people want to succeed, right? If this is the time that you're going to be on camera, or whether you're fishing or hunting or doing anything that we shoot, people really want to put their best foot forward, and I love that. And I love that people rise to that challenge. But we had one day where there was a guy that was in a very good boat, and the camera boat was like kind of a rental. And I just could tell that the guy driving it wasn't comfortable. And I mean, it was blowing up super badly. So we ended up turning around there because we're spearing waves. And I mean, you find the edge. You just have to pay, it's all about that. It's a constant calculation of upside versus downside. And at the end of the day, what we do is important, and we take a lot of pride in it, but it's not worth anybody getting, permanently or seriously hurt in any kind of way.
So I want to know, with all this downtime, has it kind of fueled a fire for your creative thoughts at all? Have you kind of, not been traveling as much, so you're just thinking about things that you want to do, or more shots, or, we could do this for this company, and, you're a business development guy, so you're probably running things through your head the entire time you're off.
Yeah, one of the things I'm really trying to do is just be respectful of the fact that clients and everybody's in a tough spot. So I'm kind of pumping the brakes on myself a little bit. I don't want to be telling somebody that laid off a bunch of their staff that they need to give us a bunch of money, or that they should be looking at something. So I'm trying to be creative and figure out the people that that we traditionally collaborate with, and where we can kind of use our resources right now to reward them for their loyalty. And yeah, we have some ideas for sure. We've got a new product coming out here soon in line with the whole Cornerstone thing. That's pretty exciting, and can't say much more about that, but that's worth keeping your eyes on, whether or not you're a hunter. And so that's taking quite a bit of bandwidth. And then, it is interesting. It's interesting not being full on all the time, because you kind of can't. Normally we work and we travel and we like go for it on the road, from professionally and socially and everything else. And then we get home and we hunt or we ski or we do whatever as hard as we can. Like, I'm a guy that just redlines it constantly, and so to be in a situation where I can't redline, like, frankly, I've struggled quite a bit with just, what am I doing? It's interesting because we have a boat, I'm sort of channeling my obsessive tendencies into salmon fishing and learning how to fish the Pacific, and our friends and I have a very intense bird watching contest, which I actually think is really fun. I would recommend that if anybody's like really hard up for something to do. But our peers, and we have like a couple versus couple bird watching contest, and it's been really fun for me because I just walk down the street by a marsh and stack like 15 species just from hearing them. But so I thought I'd be kicking everybody's ass, but they're taking it pretty seriously, and they're doing a great job, and it's really nice because that's bringing them a lot closer to understanding hunting, because they go out and they're like, oh man, I found a wood duck. That's amazing. They're beautiful. And they learn about the habitat, and they learn about where they could be. And so it's been pretty.
Uh-oh. Having some tech difficulties here.
On back.
Yeah. The internet situation has been challenging.
I think that all of this starting as a few, and go from there, because this is an incredible opportunity for everybody to reset or reinvent, or to kind of discover new avenues to take things, and we've been doing that for sure. We were really proud of Student of the Wild, launching that, and then we have some other stuff in the hopper. So
That's
have
awesome.
fun for sure.
Yeah. One of the things that I wanted to ask you, and we get this question a lot, and obviously the normal guys aren't going to the field with the level of equipment that you guys do, but you obviously go with some very expensive things that, must be protected. And, what have you guys found to be good products and things to protect gear, cameras, etc. while you're in the field, transporting, around water, all that kind of stuff. People get very nervous, but they want to get their cameras out there and, capture memories and things like that. So what are some products that you guys have found that have been useful and reliable to keep your gear safe?
It's a great question. Matt will tell you that I am not the person to ask about keeping gear safe. But
what would Matt say?
I've actually never fully wrecked a camera, which I'm very, very proud of, considering the amount of poor decisions that I've probably made. I think the biggest thing is you just need to set up a safe home base, right? If you're overly paranoid about it, you're never going to get the picture, so you just leave your stuff at home and go hunting and have fun. If you just need to make sure that there's a spot, like depending on the size of your kit, like I'm blanking. What's the Yeti box thing called that you slam shot and it's like watertight?
Oh, yeah. Loadout or something, maybe?
Yeah, man, it's a bucket. Sloan's going to kick my ass for this, but the Yeti box thing. One thing that I actually find is really great, especially for being on the marsh, is the backpack cooler that they make, because it floats and it's watertight and it's padded. So even if I have the red, like I've gone full days fishing, like wading down a river, and I basically will shoot with the camera, toss it in the floating soft-sided cooler thing, zip it up, and I'll literally just have it on a rope and just float it down the river.
Oh my gosh.
Because, the thing is, right, is like it's padded, it's waterproof, it floats. Dry bags are great, but you got to know how to roll them and take that pretty seriously, and you got to keep them sort of lubed up. But yeah, we use like dry bags. We use those the Yeti Pangas, or we'll use a cooler, and like basically don't focus on protecting individual pieces of gear as they are on their own. Just make sure that there's a place that, like, if shit gets ugly or if it starts getting windy or wet or whatever, that you can kind of dump it into a safe place and you're going to be good. Because if you're too focused on protecting the camera as it's out, I find that you miss a ton of stuff. So for that, I actually keep a peak design little clip. I put it on like a timber pack if I'm in the trees, or like in the fall when I'm in the mountains, I just wear my camera there all the time. And just having it that much closer is probably actually the best advice for getting good photos, because the reality is that the moment comes quickly and you want to be ready. And you're more likely to damage stuff, and I've seen more stuff damaged when it's coming in or out of these cases or bags or boxes. You're switching lenses or anything. It's better just to have it ready to rock and out, and then make sure that there's a safe space to throw it back into.
So have there been any really bad breaks or smashes?
Yeah, actually, probably the worst one financially was recent. We were down in the Florida Everglades shooting.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
And I was pulling focus, which basically means, for just to simplify things, I basically have a monitor in my hand where I can see what Matt is shooting. So Matt is filming, just being like sniping, doing the Matt White thing. And I have the pleasure of watching that. My responsibility is I have a wheel that sends out a remote focus feed. So he turns towards the horizon, I roll the focus wheel, it comes in, back and forth. And so we work really well like that, because we think so similarly when it comes to shooting, that we can predict, I can predict where he's going to shoot next. So we're driving through the Everglades, and this unit's probably about like 6 or 8 grand or something. And homeboy's got this thing going full buck and goes to make this sweet drift, Tokyo drift turn, hits a freaking tree like straight up on the side. And I fly across the boat, hit my hip, and like tomahawk into the foot deep water. And it was like I'm fine, but I think it took me like a couple weeks to realize how badly banged up I was. Like my hip's got I think it'll be a permanent scar on it. And the whiplash effect was pretty real. But that stuff's very broken. I got it out of the water immediately, and like tried to protect it when I fell in, but yeah, it's a write-off. So that would be a good one. Another time I was trying to film and this time it didn't actually end up being worst case, but I had this dumbass idea of like I was behind a float plane, and I was like, man, it's gonna be sweet if we're in this boat and we follow this float plane while it takes off. Well, the float plane flies by pushing massive amounts of air back, push that massive amounts of air back into a lake, and that pushed water to the point where like I had a coffee cup that I was drinking, and it was sitting next to me, and it had like 2 inches of water in it, and I just ate that right in the red. I was like, this would be great, and then just like poof, like it was an unbelievable water cannon, but it actually survived that, so worked. It was all happy in the end.
Well, that's cool. Wow. Yeah, I was surprised when you were floating around the Chesapeake and, you just sort of had the camera in one hand, like holding it above waterline as you're like on like a bobber out there, just kind of like floating around. I was definitely concerned for the well-being of that camera, but I don't think you hardly got any water on that. It looks pretty solid.
No, it's fine. I mean, the thing is, right, like, I remember that I'm coming at this from the position of privilege of having access to lots of great gear and knowing that if I break my gear, I can replace it, because it's how I make a living. So I will likely be to have a more cavalier approach to this than most people will, but they make more every day. And you like, if you were sitting in a bathtub and it was like, hey, don't drop this camera, you would be like, okay, and then you would not drop the camera. It's the same kind of program. I'm very comfortable in the water, so it's not all that different for me to be holding the camera out of the water while I'm in it, or not dropping it when I'm in a marsh or something. It's similar, and realistically, I don't know what everybody on all the listening people shoot on, but I have a Canon 1DX Mark II, and those Mark I, Mark II, and now Mark III bodies are absolutely bomber. They're essentially impermeable to water. Trust me, and they'll stand up and they have great image quality. So that's why a lot of people ask us if we're going to go mirrorless, and like we are, but we'll always keep a couple of those in the arsenal, just because you're in a rainstorm on the mountains in the Yukon and you're like, sweet, it just doesn't matter.
Yeah.
I think I heard a story about Matt. He went into some whitewater was that Beyond the Roar when you guys were filming that? Did he jumped in for a drone or something?
Yeah, and I had to rescue him with a throw bag.
Oh my gosh.
He basically, and this is a funny thing that I've kind of learned over the years. Nobody's actually said it to me directly, but I understand that the word on the street is that we intentionally flipped the canoe and Beyond the Roar. That is absolutely not the case. That was a very dangerous and very cold place to flip a canoe, but Matt shot it perfectly with the drone, and he knew how pivotal that moment was to the storytelling. And so he's like, cloud nine as he landed the drone, and as he landed it on the cooler that he launched off of, it hit a dry bag and kicked into the river. Well, his first reaction, a man of the image, just dives headfirst into the water. And Matt's a really good swimmer, but he's not massively experienced in whitewater. But the thing that was the real problem for him is that when you put on a dry suit, it seals at a gasket at your neck and your wrists. And that's an airtight seal. So what you do is, if you're expecting to go in the water, you crouch down and you push all the air out and you bleed it. Well, Matt hadn't bled his dry suit. So he's trying to swim to shore, but imagine all the air in the dry suit has pushed up to be around his neck. So he was like wearing full body water wings, like trying to swim, but he couldn't, because he couldn't get his arms under the water because he's too buoyant.
Ooh. So
he said I heard him saying, rope, I need a rope. So I pulled my throw bag and made a pretty clutch throw, so we were able to swing him in out of the rapids, because there's a really bad spot downstream that would have been extremely hairy. But what he was actually saying is, drone, look for the drone. We were going to see this drone in the whitewater. And of course, Matt, even after he made the decision to plunge in and risk it all, he still was floating helplessly downstream, shouting about the drone, not asking for help. He's a committed fella. So we ended up getting super lucky, and it felt like it sort of tucked into this back eddy under the raft. and we were able to swim down and recover it. And the drone was kind of hooped for a while, but the card was good. And the drone actually still flies. It just has a little water spot on the lens after we dried it out.
Wow, that's crazy. Yeah, the drone footage was one of the things that really stuck in my mind from that Torture Tour hunt, because up until that point, I had seen drone footage of, above birds and stuff like that, but Matt was actually flying the drone when we were shooting birds. Like, he was like up above our spread and shooting birds as we were coming by. And I don't think I'd ever seen that before that time. So, I mean, like, and the cool thing about, it was just a cool opportunity to hunt with you guys, because like, I know that like you guys capturing that image was as important to you guys and like what you're going to be able to deliver. And like that excitement just channels through us as like the guys in the blind hunting. I mean, I could hear Matt from the other boat screaming, like just so pumped that he was getting that. And I was like, he was literally just flying when we shot those birds. Like, it was just something that like fed the excitement of the whole thing. And it was just like, it was just such a cool experience, because we were hunting a bird that was not super wary, and like we were just standing out there like high-fiving, fist bumping, like just partying it up, like having a great time while still being able to kill birds. It was just one of those things where I'll just probably never forget that. It was just such a cool experience.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the things that I think is the most rewarding and most addicting about capturing hunts and fishing and anything, right? Is like, it's hard enough to kill ducks. It's hard enough to kill a deer. This year I have probably my favorite photo from this year is it's over the shoulder of my buddy, and he's full draw on this doll sheep. We hunted for 9 days in the pouring ass rain to get that photograph. We didn't get the sheep. He ended up missing the shot, but like, it's hard enough to do this stuff already. And if you add in the element of, doing it and then having the people in a place and the birds in a place and lining all that up, it's just such another level. So it's like, you can bring birds in, you can shoot them, and then you want to enhance the challenge. Well, man, like pick up a camera. Okay, pick up a tighter lens. All right. Like, you can always find ways to make it harder, and it just always pushes you to, like, for example, we go fly fishing. You go fly fishing, you see a fish, you catch it. Well, what's it like whenever you've got a Phantom Flex 4K with a 400 millimeter lens, and you have to stalk up within 6 feet of that fish, figure out its feeding pattern, cast to the feeding pattern, and then be dead focused when the fish comes up? That's a million times harder, and it just makes it so much more rewarding. And that's kind of the thing that I would, I guess, challenge people who view this stuff, is really like think about, wow, how did they get that? Because, whether it's Matt with the drone or anything along those lines, there's just so much that goes into it. And it's such an awesome thrill to take something that's such a challenge anyways, and then to make that into something that, is sort of permanent and lasting. And I absolutely love that. And yeah, I'm glad you guys fed off that energy.
Yeah, and there's one clip in one of your videos that's been circulating the internet here recently where a trout rises and takes a dry fly off the surface, and I can't remember if it's a dry fly or if it's an actual like real fly that was just floating.
It's a dry fly.
And I was just like
BMD.
Yeah, and that's immediately what I thought. I was like, how long did it take for them to get that shot? Because like, when my kid's watching Dude Perfect, I'm like, how many takes did it take for them to like make that shot or whatever? And that's the same thing I think about when I see something like that. I'm like, that is just like,
the difference
crazy.
Between this and Dude Perfect, as you guys know, is like, there's no practice.
Right.
There are no retries. Like, I think that's the thing that's so cool about waterfowl hunting. From a photographer's standpoint, is like, you're going to have a couple flocks of birds, hopefully. Maybe you'll have a ton of flocks of birds. And if you go out tomorrow, there'll be more birds. So you get to try and refine that approach with opportunities. Like, whenever I was sheep hunting this year, there was not going to be another sheep. That was the shot. And it's pretty cool, and that's why you see so much good imagery come out of waterfowling, and so many waterfowl photographers become kind of more generally successful in the hunting sphere, is because you just have hundreds of iterations and opportunities to try and master that approach and master that craft. And even when the opportunities get more scarce, the things that you've learned were there from bird hunting. And it's the same thing with with fishing to an extent, depending on the species, but like you can just get so much practice in, but it's still not something that you can just set up a garbage can in your backyard and throw a football at it 3,000 times until you get one in, you know?
Right.
So it's, yeah, you gotta, the opportunities to get that practice are hard to come by, but they're easier to come by in waterfowl than almost anything else, which is great.
So a question I have for you, you know, like you said, there's a lot of opportunity in waterfowl hunting to put your gun down and get your camera up and snap those pictures. Are you in a place now where you would rather have a camera on a sheep hunt or an elk hunt, or are you still in the harvest state where you like to go out and pull the trigger or pull the, you know, release the arrow on it?
I think I actually went to the camera state and then I came back. I think I don't know if there's like a if that's part of it. Maybe I backslid or maybe it's a trajectory thing. But like the reality is I probably spent the past 7 years of my life documenting a lot of other great moments for people and for each other. And you know, Matt has done it even more than I have because he filmed him Beyond the Roar. I would rather, if I had one day to just go and hunt, it's because it's kind of like my church, you know, it's my happy place, the thing that I love the very most. And when I have a camera, I'm innately thinking like, okay, how would I shoot it for this brand? How would I shoot it for that brand? How would I shoot it for a print magazine? How would I shoot it if I wanted to cover? What's a social post look like? I have enough of a kind of selector built in that I'm constantly viewing it. And I think you have to do that to be successful, unless you're like the second coming to some extent. People thinking that they have like their own unique take on things. I mean, maybe, but like I definitely view it as we at Rockhouse are extremely skilled at amplifying and highlighting the perspective that our clients and partners have in a moment, instead of being like kind of capturing it in a way that just makes sense to us. Like that's not always the case, but yeah, I want to be there to hunt generally. It doesn't necessarily mean that I have to be shooting. Like this sheep hunt, I wasn't like, oh man, I wish I had a bow. It's not like I need to have the weapon in my hand, but I definitely like to be focused and involved in the process of hunting as opposed to purely there to capture it. So probably, I mean, to half-ass the question, it would probably be somewhere in the middle.
Yeah, I mean, I could see how that would be kind of a conflict, because it's, you know, we often, you know, we're taking pictures and stuff for more like just personal memories and, you know, documenting our kids and things like that, where it's your work, you know, I mean, that's how you earn your living. So there's a lot more pressure and a lot more that goes into that. And like, you know, at the end of the day, if we miss the shot, so what, you know, it's not the end of the world. There's a lot more that rides on it for you guys. So I get that. At this point, I'm going to let Dan go with one more question, because I'm sure he has, but I've got, as we talk about a new normal, I got to go do a curbside pickup on a grocery delivery that are like a golden ticket around here. It's like you get to go tour Wonka's factory if you can get a curbside delivery time for groceries these days. So I'm going to have to bolt here shortly on that, but I know I want to let Dan close it out here, because I'm sure he's got probably 100 more questions. So pick your best one, Dan.
Got so many, you know, I love Aaron, but
it's documented.
Man, just a final thought. When do you think you're going to be able to travel back to the United States? Hunting season's going to open up. Do you think people are going to be out of hunts this fall?
I think that the border will remain closed through the summer. I think that, I think that October, November, we'll be back. I don't know what it'll take to do that. And I don't know if going for a couple days, you know, especially for all the people coming up here that are like, oh man, let's go up to Saskatchewan for a couple days and get them. That could be tough. But I don't want to, crazy question. I don't know. Yeah. But start preparing yourself for it, so that when it happens, it's not like you're just getting blindsided. Because the thing is with the border crossing, okay, you go quarantine for 14 days when you get there, and you quarantine for 14 days when you get back. That's 28 days and not hunting, and not many people can swing that. So I don't know. I would be optimistic that we're at a point where we either are understanding, mitigating the spread, or we have the capacity to sort of handle a little bit more and from a healthcare standpoint. So I would try and stay optimistic about that, because if I'm not optimistic about that, it's going to be tough to be optimistic about anything else.
Right, right. Well, Aaron, man, we appreciate you taking time to join us today. It's a long time coming having you on the show. We've talked about this for probably better 2 years or more at this point. We always enjoy when we get to hang out with you guys, and we'd love to get sometime when we get a hunt, get back to normal, get a hunt together with you and the CGA guys, and get some stuff put together and do that. I think that'd be a blast. But again, we appreciate you taking time for us today, man. And we've got your Instagram handle on the video for everyone that's going to see this on YouTube. But for everybody else that's going to be listening to this, where can they find not only your content, but also all the Rockhouse content?
Yeah, so I mean, this has obviously been me talking about Rockhouse as an absolute team effort, right? So you're going to probably enjoy our stuff best on Instagram, and you can find the rest from there. That's going to be Rockhouse Motion. You guys can insert the making fun of how I say house, because I'm a Canadian. But Rockhouse Motion. There will be Matt_White_Rockhouse. There'll be Cullen Photogram. There'll be Dustin_Rockhouse. Then there's at C. Lucas Clark, who's been a recent and high-powered addition to our team. He's been killing it. And Naoto.aoki.photography is also another key member. So, yeah, basically what I'd recommend is you go to at Rockhouse Motion, your website link's there, and then you'll be able to figure out who we are. But, anybody that takes the time to check out our work, I hugely appreciate it. And if you're a hunter, sportsman, or outdoors person of any way, I recommend that you start with a film we just launched called Student of the Wild. That can be found. Just Google Student of the Wild Rockhouse and it'll pop up, because it's done pretty well for us. And I think that in times like these, it's a pretty good refresher as far as the things that we love and why we love it and what we're grateful for. And that's certainly, we tried to pour all of that into the making of the film, and hopefully you guys can find it and enjoy it. No doubt.
Yeah. Been loving all the behind the scenes stuff that you guys have been doing recently, and all the stuff you guys have been putting out there on Instagram TV. So if you're looking for some of that, looking for some internet stuff to keep you busy, check out Rockhouse Motion for sure. And man, again, we appreciate it. Let's not wait 2 years to do it again. And once we get back hunting and stuff, and I know your schedule obviously gets super crazy when you have the flexibility to move around, but we look forward to having you guys back on and talking more about what's going on. And till then, man, stay safe, and we'll talk to you again soon.
Awesome. Same to you guys.
All right, bud.